So now that we've seen broad adoption trends in the country, seen what's happening in the BPO sector, see the threat of AI on BPO jobs, uh, I'd like to cover parts of the risks of AI because I think AI is a disruptive technology. There's a lot of opportunity to use it for good. But just like Pandora's box, now that we've opened it, there are also some dangers that have come out. Now, the AI safety report, I think, is one of the best places to start if you want to understand the safety and the ethics of not just AI in general, but advanced AI. When we say advanced AI, these are the generative AI, general purpose technologies that have been deployed. You can find the report on this link, bit.ly/ AI underscore safety underscore report underscore 2025. It's about under 300 pages, lots of information. It was actually written by scientists and engineers for policymakers. And the key sections of the report include capabilities, assessment, risks, and how to mitigate those risks. So this chart shows over the years how quickly AI models have reached human level performance. These lines represent different AI models now. For example, the MNIST model, this is for recognizing handwritten digits. And some of these others refer to specific models. You know, one was looking at image recognition, one was looking at text. And well, one thing you can see is that as we go forward, the time it took for these models to reach human level performance was faster. You know, MNIST took years, but now within a single year, a model performance can hit human level faster. No? The dark bar here is the human benchmark. But these are still individual models. When I say individual models, very narrow kind of models. So in other words, the model that knows how to recognize handwriting is not the same model that can play chess. It's not the same model that can recognize cats. So that's always been the trend in AI over the years. We create these very specific, specialized models that can do one thing. Now, all of that is changing with generative AI. You know, this is a similar chart. Both charts are in the report, by the way. And what this does is track the performance of various large language models in terms of answering questionnaires. Okay, so the bottom bar here, this is for random results. And the top bar here is PhD level questions. And as you can see over the years, actually just 2 years, the latest LLMs are already starting to hit the PhD level. And when we say PhD level, it's not PhD level in one subject. It's PhD level across multiple subjects. So I think that's the big difference nowadays. We have general purpose AI that can do many things. So if you, for example, if you use ChatGPT, not only can it answer questions, it can do calculations, it can generate images. So this is very different from the narrow AI that we've been used to dealing with that can only do one thing. So that being said, how should we act? You know, I think this is where a lot of the, I guess, the fears, Hollywood type fears are coming up. Like, okay, are these AI looking to displace us, or will they will come and kill us? And that's something worth looking at. What has actually happened in the recent past is the emergence of what we're calling deep learning. Deep learning is basically it's machine learning, which is the use of data sets and algorithms to detect patterns from that data and then create whatever, you know, more data or projections or forecasts. Now, around 2010, deep learning became more prevalent. The reason for this is the emergence of cheaper hardware like the NVIDIA GPUs, graphics processing cards, which allow lots of really parallel calculations that enable deep learning. Deep learning is still machine learning, But where machine learning was concerned over smaller data sets, deep learning can now handle huge data sets and unstructured data sets like text data, image data, video data, protein folding for drug discovery. Because the algorithms are also, that's why it's called deep learning. They're quite deep. In other words, you have multiple layers of neural networks that can process all of this information, and that's been enabled by hardware. And you can see here the trend. No, this is actually an exponential chart. So from the 1950s up to around 2010, this is Moore's law. And after deep learning picked up, you can see the slope has accelerated. So it's still exponential, but even more exponential. That's why you saw how fast those models were reaching human level performance. And this is expected to continue. That's why we have to be ready for the era where AI models can match or even exceed human level performance. Does that mean they take over? I don't think so, because at the end of the day, humans still trigger the AI. But in terms of performing tasks, you have to be ready that AI will get to that level. The other thing about jobs, and this is also published in the AI Safety Report, is that there's a common misnomer that uh, only low-level repetitive work is at risk. Certainly, that's at risk. But this chart shows that the higher your salary, the x-axis here is your salary, the more your tasks are actually exposable to an AI, especially large language models. Large language models do a lot of work in content, no? And that's everything from writing reports, reading research, performing calculations, generating images. And as it turns out, those are also the tasks being handled by white collar labor. So people with advanced degrees, people with, again, highly paid people are actually doing work that AI can now do. And that's something worth reflecting on. For me, I think it's inevitable. We have to be ready for the era where we will be using AI, where we will be cooperating with AI, where AI will be working with other AI. It's really the trend. Now, for you, if you're looking to navigate a career, how ready is your career for such a environment? Okay, so the AI safety report lists down three types of risks that we have to also address. And I like the way it's grouped together because these represent different kinds of problems that require different types of solutions. The first is obviously malicious use. So he said AI will not take your job. It's people using AI that will take your job. And that's also true for other issues, like fake content. We just recently concluded an election and we were ringing the alarm bell on misinformation and public opinion. Social media is already run by AI. So the way people absorb information is already being manipulated by AI, whether we would like to admit it or not. Of course, cyber offense, cyber attacks are a natural phenomenon now, and AI is being used by cyber criminals to attack. Of course, something more abstract, but actually is happening today, dual use science. When you say dual use science, the creation of chemical weapons, biological weapons, the same AI used to detect or create antibodies and vaccines obviously can be used to create new viruses, and that's something worth reflecting on. The second type of risk is functionality. So this is where AI does not perform as expected. So everything from product malfunction, bias and underrepresentation, or loss of control. I remember when people started using the Chinese AI DeepSeek, they noticed that it refused to answer anything that talked bad about China. So obviously that's a bias that needs to be addressed, despite DeepSeek being one of the cheapest models to use. And then lastly, the systemic risks. I think these are kind of the more global and macro risks the media loves talking about. So if malicious use is people intending to use AI for bad things, functionality is where AI does not perform according to expectation. Systemic risks are AI creating bad results that people may not have intended. no? Like labor displacement, the digital divide, market concentration. 'Cause there's a lot of power concentrated in the US right now because many AI companies are based there. Of course, risks to the environment, privacy risks because of the data used to train the AI, and of course, infringing on copyright, which the creative industries are complaining about because of the use of AI for image generation and copywriting. So these are risks worth pondering upon. If we're looking to adopt AI, we need to also write policies that can address this. I keep saying policies are required when markets no longer function properly. And in these areas, markets are actually quite inefficient. They can't price these issues properly, which is sort of why we need a policy intervention to make sure we keep AI safe for future use. So finally, if you read the AI safety report, after discussing the risks, there's also what do we do. And I have to be the first to admit that this is still a work in progress. But some of the areas being discussed include, of course, adopting risk management as a discipline. Risk management was already in popular even before AI. And the same principles you use to manage other risks like operational risks, market risk, credit risk, ISO 31000, for example, can be applied to AI as well. We also need to train better models. When we say better, not just more accurate models, models that are free of bias, models that don't hallucinate, models that promote fair use of intellectual property. That's really the onus is really on model developers. Unfortunately, in the current era, we are generally not in control of these large language models, these foundation models, which is why I'm being one of the first people to suggest we need to develop sovereign AI. AI developed by the Philippines for Philippine use. It's the only way we can ensure that these models are less risky compared to the ones we're inheriting from China and the US. We need to develop monitoring and intervention strategies. So those looking to study, how do you measure model drift? How do you do model evaluations? This is going to be a very in-demand skill in the near future. Of course, fairness and representation in the data and enforcing privacy.